So in Buddhist culture, you get different kind of emphases on what this practice is about. Different teachers will emphasize different things because of their own experience. And so it's important to just listen to it and not think it's absolute. There seem to be many ways that you can meditate. So if you can't, if something I say or another teacher says doesn't work, it doesn't mean you can't meditate. It's just not your particular style. And that's the richness of Buddhism, that there are these different um, emphases. And I think the richness of the Thai forest tradition, that it's not, that it can be idiosyncratic, means it can be very individual. So the way Luang Mahabua would teach would be maybe different than the way that Luang Por Chah might teach, the different way that Luang Por Dun would teach, but yet they are speaking of the same thing. So you're really lucky to be in Thailand, and really, and you're very fortunate to have the Thai language that you can tune in to these different wonderful teachers that exist here. But also you have the challenge of cultural attachment to views and opinions and ideas, which Lapa Sumedho would translate as Sila Bhatta Paramasa, attachment to culture. So I don't know about Thailand, but say in Sri Lanka, one of the attachments to cultural views is that enlightenment is impossible. It only happened in the time of the Buddha. That Sotapatti is like only for the elite of meditators. And that's a cultural bias that is very common, I find, when I speak to Sri Lankan contemplatives and meditators. And I say, well, that's just a Omhen, it's just a viewpoint. What does it actually mean? So you want to be careful of that. What if culture has put limitations on your self-perception, that like I'm a layman, so I can't realize nibbana, don't believe it. Don't believe that you're limited in that way. I don't think it's true. So that's my opinion. But I want to encourage you, and I don't want to just encourage you. Okay, feed me, and I'll get enlightened. You'll make merit next lifetime, and that's sort of facetious. But that you have intelligence, you're smart, you have sila, you have faith, you have all the equipment. So I think all of us as monks are just trying to encourage people. You can do this. You're not limited in that way. So cultural attachments. But if we go back to the idea of Pakponchit, I think that's one of the ways I've been trying to encourage you on this retreat when I say this experience is in awareness. To me, that's a relaxing suggestion. So our normal lives are what we're like. If I'm engaged in the monastery with, I'm making something, so then I'm engaged with objects. I'm measuring a piece of wood. I'm using equipment. I make some drawings. I work on the project. Or if I'm dealing with some conflict in the monastery, there's some difficulty, I'm dealing with the objects of conflict or my own mind. If I'm enjoying some literature, I'm reading some poetry, then I'm engaged with the poetry, with the words. So these are fine. This is just life. And we're trying to do this very, very well. We're trying to do it mindfully, carefully, morally, respectfully, etc. And that is a good life. That is a good life. We fulfill our vocations. If we're a mother, we try to be a good mother. If we're a dentist, we try to be a good dentist. If we are monk, we try to be a good monk. So these are the worldly dharmas which we try to do well. But is there more? Is it just me about doing things well? Is there more? And the Nibbana Sutta says, yes, there is the unconditioned, the uncreated. And this, we said, the unborn and the unbecoming, the unmade and the unfabricated from. So, and if there was not that, there would be no escape from the born. So to me, that's important. Obviously, that's important. So there is, and sometimes we just say there is peace. So part of our life is engaged with things, but if we never put the world down, as we say, if we never learn how to just witness how things are, we're always in the worldly dharmas. And sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not, sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. This is just normal. So the teaching here isn't about like you can never have fun. If you're going to get enlightened, you must not have any fun. It's not that, because that's another viewpoint, that you shouldn't enjoy life or that you shouldn't communicate. So one very lovely example of this was when Luang Por came to visit us in London, 1979. Luang Por used to smoke cigarettes. The monks in Isan, they smoked cigarettes. In fact, when I first arrived as a samanera, if we went to a dana in a person's home, you'd sit down at the dana. I was a samanera, so I would be last. And beside your spittoon and water jug, you'd have a Pepsi, cigarettes and matches, and an ashtray. I thought, oh, that's cool. Now the monks didn't light up and smoke. They're. And then Luang Por eventually forbade tobacco, not because of health concerns, because lay people were spending a lot of money in buying cigarettes from the monks. And I think he enjoyed smoking. Fast forward a few years to London, 1979. And we had a Pakao, an English Pakao, who painted the pastel painting in Chithurst Monastery, very, very famous pastel picture of Luang Por sitting, which is used in a lot of publications. Beautiful, exquisite portraiture, and very, very, very much like the likeness of Luang Por. Well, his name was Jerry, and Jerry was addicted to smoking. And he was always trying to quit, and then he was smoking. And he was our first anagarika, the only anagarika, and we were very grateful to him. Otherwise, we would have starved in London, I think. And once he tried to give up smoking and had a fight in the kitchen. So then Luang Por Sumedho says, I forbid you to let go of smoking, or we're just going to have too many problems here. So Jerry would go off and have smoke. So he'd go into the back garden, and he rolled up his own cigarettes. It's expensive. And then Luang Por goes into the back garden, and he sees Jerry. He says, kind of suggests, how about one for me? And this was just so beautiful. So I go into the back, and there's Jerry sitting on the same bench as Luang Por. There's some pictures of Luang Por standing in a garden with a bench behind. And that's the bench I'm thinking of. There's the two of them sitting there, and they're both. And Luang Por has got a second one in his hand. And it was both beautiful to see him enjoying himself, but beautiful, and this beautiful how he related to Jerry, because Jerry was always kind of anxious, and then Luang Por just relaxed him by having a cigarette with him. So it was so compassionate, but Luang Por was also enjoying himself. And I've never seen anyone as elegant as Luang Por smoking a cigarette. It was just like he could have done a commercial. So, it's not about some kind of asceticism where you can't appreciate life or have beauty and so on. But it's more about disengaging with experience, not rejecting experience, just disengaging, I think is a better word. So when I say, like if I'm worried about something in the monastery, there isn't much to worry about, but I can make problems. And then I notice the worry. If I say, oh, the worry is in awareness, then I come to the background, I come to the space, and then the mind has a sense of ease. Still have to deal with the problem. So that's what we're doing here. We don't have to engage the objects. We don't have to fix anything. We don't have to solve any problems. We have the freedom now to constantly put the world down, not reject it, not get rid of it. That won't work, because that's hatred. It's not a matter or vibhava tanha, but it's a matter of not picking up the world. This is the language we use. I don't know if that works for you, but just that sense of that, like if you're self-critical on this retreat, say, you think, oh, I'm not getting anywhere and I'm too sleepy and da 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 da. That's the language of attachment. You don't want to go to another language of attachment. Oh, I shouldn't be attached. But you just want to just say, oh, this is in awareness. So we have so many analogies for this. So one is space and form. There's the space in this room. So if let's say I'm foolish enough, I'm sitting here and I get annoyed at the sound of whatever, the air conditioner. It'd be a very foolish thing to do. But let's say I just start to get up negative about the air conditioner and gets louder. Then my mind is just concentrated on negativity. Then if I try to get rid of that, I'm still kind of on the object, but I say, oh, irritation is like this. I'm not even trying to get rid of the irritation. Annoyance feels like this. It's in awareness. Then annoyance is known. And because annoyance is anicca dukkha anatta, it arises and it manifests for a while and then it ceases. And in the cessation, there is peace. Anicca vata sankara upadavaya dhammino upachitava nirujanti te sangupasano sukho. In the cessation, there's peace. And that peace is natural. So we're not trying to get peaceful by getting rid of unpeaceful. You see what I mean? If you try to get rid of unpeaceful, the methodology won't work because the intention is not peaceful. So first of all, I have to be at peace with non-peace. I have to be at peace with irritation or annoyance or whatever. Let's say, like with the noble silence, which everyone seems to be very diligent in practicing. So sadhu to all of us. Let's say in the context of noble silence, you feel lonely or bored, whatever. And then that loneliness is sankata. It's conditioned. It comes up because of causes. Now, if I then start thinking lonely thoughts, I'll get more lonely. I might even get depressed. Or if I then figure out how I can go to the hotel and have my second iPhone, which is in the hotel, and then go on Facebook and talk with 16 people, I might get past the loneliness, but I'll feel very guilty. So, but what if I just make conscious the feeling of loneliness? Loneliness, what does it feel like to be lonely? Or to something like that, say, oh, loneliness is like this, in awareness. So now the arising of something, I'm seeing it as an object, and I'm seeing the desire to get rid of it, to have another experience. But if I just keep going and have another experience, and I'm always in in samsara. I never rest the mind. But how do I want to rest the mind? Well, maybe I need to rest it by being a patient with like loneliness. So I say quite consciously, loneliness feels like this. Kanyang niang. This is the language we use. It's like this. And then I wait. And it's not permanent. And it's not who you are. It's anatta. It's just conditioned. And then you wait. And then you have the peace of non-grasping, the peace of allowing something to cease. That's why we emphasize nirodha so much. Not nirodha in some, we do too, in some kind of final sense, but nirodha in the little ways, cessation in the little ways, where you notice something like that, and you're just patient with it. You just witness it. It's in awareness. So now we're emphasizing awareness rather than the objects of awareness. In the world, we're emphasizing the objects. You're driving your car. I hope you emphasize the car and the road, otherwise you did, right? So this is in awareness crash. So obviously, so we have to do that. But now we're emphasizing the container rather than the objects in the container. And this people don't do very much. They're so taken by the objects in the container as an analogy. But now we're practicing the mind knowing the mind, puru. Now it's the knowing, all the different ways that we might say that. So when was it? Yesterday I said, you know that you know. And that's a weird thing to say. But what is that? Like, well, right now, you're sitting here, and you know you're here, correct? And what would you call that? It's not hot. It's not cold. It's not male. It's not female. It's not Farang. It's not Thai. It's not male. Not female. It's not. What is it? It's just. What words would you use? I like to use conscious presence. Conscious presence. Now that's always there. That's the unformed, the unborn. It's not born, because conscious presence makes all of this possible. If you didn't have that, you wouldn't know anything. So the worldling is always engaged in the objects. The contemplative puts down the objects and notices the space of conscious awareness. So the language here is it's difficult to describe. So I use conscious presence, conscious awareness, knowing, sati sampajanya, if you want, things like that. Now, and what we don't do is we don't tend to investigate awareness. We tend to investigate objects. But have you ever, like, I like to play around with that. Like, well, what is awareness? Like, we're sitting here now. This is an ordinary experience. This is just dhammachat. So if you just like listen to sound, there is the sound and there's the knowing. Yeah? Now, has awareness an external boundary? Does it have a limit? I can't find one. Can you? A boundary, a border? Now, to do this, you have to stop thinking. If you're thinking, what's he talking about anyway? What do you mean boundary? Then you're not noticing. So the question then brings you to silence, hopefully. So listen to sound. Now, does awareness have an outer limit? Okay, another question. Does awareness have a center? What do you notice? I notice silence, silent presence. Does awareness have a taste? Like, is it sweet or sour? Is awareness mind? Is awareness the same as sound? Is it different than sound? Now, all those questions, I think, for me, they always bring me to silence, because you can't really answer them. So sound arises and ceases in the space of conscious knowing. We're emphasizing conscious knowing now rather than the sound. So the sound changes to pleasant and unpleasant. So let's say you're meditating and your samadhi is becoming really, really refined, very beautiful, very serene, and the person next to you falls asleep and starts snoring. Now, you're just getting your samadhi nice, and this idiot starts snoring next to you. And what happens? Sound changes, but your desire for silence judges this person as being foolish. Can't they meditate? Shut up. What? And all of a sudden you're born into the world of sound. All right? And this is birth. This is becoming. And then you notice your irritation and your judgment. You say, oh, criticism is like this. Now, if you criticize them for the last 10 sittings, you're in trouble because you'll start to anticipate them. Oh, God, there's that person. Maybe you'll move to the other side of the room. Of course, having moved to the other side of the room, you can create more karma, and then you'll hear them even louder when they're over here. So keep creating karma around sound. It's just a sound, but the sound is not what you want. You want the silence of whatever. So you grasped, you picked up the world of sound and became agitated, and then maybe you write them a note, and then you find out they have sleep apnea or something like that. I mean, this is a ridiculous example, but here, that's when you're emphasizing the objects in the container. Now, it really doesn't matter. And this is why we talk about metta bhavana. The question from yesterday, I find several meditation methods to be useful, using background silence, loving kindness, contemplation, body awareness. Question, should I just stick to one method? If I can switch between different methods, how do I determine which to use? So it's good to have a kind of skill in being able to produce different ways of practice. And those skills you learn from retreats or your own interest. And then I think what you find is you understand those skills intuitively, like driving a car, maybe. You know, the skills of braking, the skills of acceleration, skills of steering, the skills of predicting. I don't drive a car, actually. But you have all these skills, and then they just come into play as you are driving your car. So in the same way in meditation, like having a sense of the container and the objects in the container, or the background and the foreground, of picking up the world and putting down the world, having that kind of a skill. And then body awareness. This is not my body. This is an object in awareness, so that when you get pain or discomfort, you can see, oh, discomfort is in awareness. It's an object in awareness. You have a refuge, awareness. And metta bhavana is so very, very important, because I think awareness is like a mother. It accepts all her children. Now, if you've had a bad mother, you're in trouble with this. So maybe this isn't like, but you know, it's like awareness has to accept all things. Otherwise, it's not awareness. It's judgment of one or the other. So the acceptance of all things means that you accept pain and pleasure, disappointment and success. Someone blames you and you feel resentful. Someone praises you, you feel great. You accept the whole thing. So awareness or conscious presence has no boundaries. It has no limit. And where do the limits come up? The limits come up through craving or wanting. I create the limit because I don't want the snoring sound. I don't want the negative emotion that's coming up in my mind. I want the experience I had yesterday of peace and so on. So I create the limits through craving and attachment. But when you just investigate, what is conscious presence? Just do that. It's a mystery. And yet it makes everything else possible. If you didn't have conscious presence, you wouldn't know a sweet and sour. Couldn't happen. So I mean, I find that really interesting to do exercises of actually considering what is awareness. And I have no answer. I can only be aware. And then I begin to understand why we talk about peace, that the silence of awareness is the peace which accepts all things, and hence metta bhavana. Metta bhavana is very important that you understand that metta is not, it's not averse. You're not rejecting anything. You're allowing all things to arise and to cease in that way. So to this person's question, I would say that you as you practice, you trust that your intuition will respond to the context of your experience in meditation. You know, if you've done it enough, you'll see that maybe with some discomfort in your body, you start to have aversion. And intuitively, you know, no, welcome the pain, be with the pain. Or maybe you'll have like a body that this is an experience in awareness. You come to the space. So if you've learned these things and understood them, they'll come forward. Just as I think driving a car, all these skills become quite natural. They come into you. So what doesn't arise? And like for me, the statement that when I first discovered Buddhism, and then I think I said to my first teacher, I can't remember, but the kind of statement that everything is changing, you'd say, no, 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 no. That's not Buddhism. Everything is changing. It's nihilism. That which has a nature to arise has a nature to cease. And that is a different statement. So here we have the unborn, the unfabricated. If there was not that, there would be no escape from the born and fabricated. If you say everything's changing, you don't have Buddhism. You don't have Nibbana. You don't have the Buddha's enlightenment. You just have a nihilistic, you have a kind of existentialism, I suppose, if you read philosophy. So then my inquiry into these things, well, was what doesn't change rather than everything is changing. And quite often as Buddhists will say that, oh, it's all meine. Is there anything nanon? Is that correct? Pretty good. Is there anything certain? I mean, that's a very interesting question, isn't it? Is everything certain? Meine. But what is certain is that I know that I know. Conscious presence. And if I remember that, then that's refuge. That's what I mean by refuge. And it truly is a refuge because you can feel, let's say you really lose your sense of confidence. And for some, like, let's say some horrible situation happens, your family rejects you, you lose your job and your dog dies. Everything's gone. And you feel terrible and horrible. I don't wish it on anyone, but you know that you know. And that's refuge. You know that you know, and then the worldly dharmas you adapt. So the beauty of this teaching is that it's unborn and uncreated. Do you create conscious awareness? Do you actually make that? Is it something you're doing to create? I don't think so. No. It's such. So we talk about suchness. Well, the Buddha, there's such realized, Tathagata. We have that kind of language. What do you think? Does that make sense? Okay, let's do some meditation. Stretch your legs a bit if you want. So my own metta bhavana practice is simply quite visceral. I always try to bring my attention down here. And as you know, and I found that even these kinds of teachings can be very cerebral. I can be up in my head, and just learning how to bring my energy down from the head through the throat down into the heart is a very settling process. And there's something about the heart which how do you say, neutralizes tanha. Because when you abide at the heart, I find there's a kind of fulfillment there, either as compassion or joy or whatever. So I'll just give you a brief introduction. You have your own ways of doing this, but I would encourage a kind of in body awareness, learning to bring your attention here. I think that's very, very helpful. So let's just sit for that 45 minutes and see what happens. Listen to sound. Sound is moving, experienced in awareness. Awareness, conscious space. Feel the body and not a changing experience in awareness. Whole body awareness. Bring attention to the head. The head is an object in awareness. Bring your attention to your throat. Go inside the throat. Make conscious the inner sensations of the throat. So you localize attention, and then you let that become conscious. Just wait there. So again, you're allowing things to become conscious, but you're not trying to get anything. Just the way it is, waiting, knowing. Sometimes you'll feel tightness, and you'll even want to yawn. Kind of opening up the throat chakra. Bring your attention then further down into the center of the chest. Make conscious any feelings at the center of the chest. Now bring up an image or a memory of someone you love. So a picture of someone that you're grateful, someone you appreciate. Name the person and notice any feelings in the center of the chest. Express gratitude to the person or express love to the person. And feel the center of the chest. So using the name of the person, welcome on the in-breath at the center of the chest. On the out-breath, wish them well. May you be well. Thank you. So for instance, if I use Lompa Sameto, on the in-breath, I say Lompa. And the out-breath, may you be well. So you're stimulating a natural feeling through perception. And then use one or two people. And then you can let go of the people and just abide with the open heart. So stimulate it with the name, image of a person, with the in-breath, out-breath well-wishing. Do that a bunch of times. Pick up another person a bunch of times until you start to feel that openness of the heart. Then let go of the thoughts and just be with the open heart, with the awareness settled at the center of the chest. And then once you've cultivated that for a while, you want to play around with awareness accepting all things. So you bring some sense of space, inclusion. Awareness accepts all things, rejects none. So the open heart is given boundlessness and a boundless sense of accepting all things, rejecting none.